Hi, welcome to My Little Yarn on the Prairie. My name is Melanie and I live near Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, Canada. As you can see, it is fall and the crops are off the field and winter is coming soon. Today I'm bringing you a tutorial for a blanket I designed for Boggy Creek. If you don't know what Boggy Creek Camp is, or who they are, it's a camp for sick kids down in Florida. And every child that attends gets sent a blanket home with them to keep, a handmade blanket. And so today I'm going to show you a design for the first blanket in a series that I'm thinking of calling Superhero Blankets for Super Kids. The first one is Spiderman, which was my son's favorite growing up, and I haven't met many boys who do not love Spiderman. So I went looking on the internet originally just to find a pattern for a Spiderman blanket and found that there were knit ones, there were ones in the round, there were ones that were in star shapes, but I didn't find any that were square or any that were easy to make or quick to make. So that's what I went about designing. The closest I could find was a blanket square for a blanket, one of many superhero squares that was rectangular and it was done in single crochets, and that's just not what I wanted to do. So I hope you enjoy the blanket that I created. I hope you enjoy making it, and I hope that you were able to make some to send to these really amazing kids. Okay, this is the original colorway that I designed with the traditional or classic costume of Spider-Man, which was blue and red with black spider webs on it and the black spider. There are definitely other colorways that can be used. One of the colorways that I've done is kind of in the baby colors. So using baby pink, sky blue, and true gray. Another possibility is using peony pink, peacock, or you could use bright blue. I think bright blue might go better. And I got a skein of Bernat that was missing the label, so I don't actually know the color, but it's kind of a silvery gray. You could also use a charcoal instead to go for the darker coloring. This is just a brighter version of that pink and blue one. All right, let's get started with our tutorial. We're going to start with a magic ring. And if you don't know how to do a magic ring, I will briefly show you here. I lay the yarn across the palm of my hand. I use my thumb to pinch the yarn against my index finger with the tail down towards my wrist. I go across the back of my fingers, of two fingers. I come up underneath and then I cross it over on the top, and I use my last two fingers to hold on to the working yarn. We go under the first cross that we made, grab our working yarn, pull under, get a little twist as you pull it under, go and grab a loop of the working yarn and pull it through to lock that stitch in place. I switch my hands, I put two fingers into the magic loop, my thumb holds the working yarn from slipping. Okay, and we're going to start with a stacked single. to do our first double crochet, and then we need a total of 8 double crochets into the magic circle, including the stacked single. So pull up a loop, do a single crochet, then you want to go under that leg of your crochet stitch, pull up a loop, you've got 2 on it, and there's the second single crochet stacked on top of the first. Okay, now we're just going to do 7 more double crochets into the magic ring, and I will meet back with you once you have those there. Okay, we've got 8 double crochets into the magic ring. We're going to use that yarn tail, tighten up the circle. Okay, and then we are going to slip stitch into that first stitch, which was our stacked single, to complete round 1. So you have 8 double crochets. The next round, we're going to start with a stacked single, just like the previous round. So pull up a loop, do a single crochet, go under that leg, pull up a loop, but we're not going to complete it because we're doing a double crochet 2 together. So leave the 2 loops on your hook, yarn over, go back into that same stitch, pull up a loop, pull through 2, you now have 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through all 3, chain 1. So that's our first double crochet 2 together. We want 8 of those in this round, but we also need to make corners. So we're going to start with a corner, we're going to do 2 more chains, so a total of 3 chains in every corner. Yarn over, go into the next stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, leave the 2 loops on your hook, yarn over, go back into that first loop, pull up, or first stitch, pull up a loop, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 3, chain 1. Okay, then we're going to do another double crochet 2 together in the next stitch. So yarn over, pull up a loop, pull through 2, yarn over, go back into the same stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 3. This is our second corner, so you're going to be chaining 3 in this corner. Yarn over into the next stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, back into the same stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 3, chain 1. Okay, we're going to repeat that. Yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 3, chain 1. We are in our third corner, so chain 2 more. And in the next stitch, we'll do our double crochet 2 together, chain 1. In the next stitch is a double crochet 2 together, chain 1, but we're in our final corner, so chain 2 more. In the next stitch, do our double crochet 2 together, chain 1. We're back at our beginning, so we're going to slip stitch into that first stitch to close, and you will have 8 double crochets 2 together, chain 3s in the corner, and a chain 1 in between the other ones. We're going to turn our work. Now, because I've turned our work, for me this acts just like a chain 1. If you're more comfortable doing a chain 1, you can go ahead and do that. Otherwise, into that chain space, we're going to do the first of our stacked singles. So you do a single crochet, and then don't complete the second part of the stack. Then we're going to do the second half of our double crochet 2 together in the top of the previous double crochets. So yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 3, and chain 1. In the corners, we're going to do a double crochet 2 together on this side. We're going to chain 3 for our corner. We're going to do double crochet 2 together, both in that chain corner, okay? Chain 1. Now, if you look on this side and remember, we did a double crochet 2 together, chain 1, and then we chain 2 for the corner. So our double crochet 2 together always start in the chain space. So you're going to go back into that corner chain space, do the first half of your double crochet 2 together, go into the next stitch, double crochet 2 together, chain 1. So again, into the chain space first, double crochet, and we're doing double crochet 2 together at the end, chain 1, we're in another corner, so we're going to put a double crochet 2 together on each side of the corner. We're going to do that 3 chains across the corner. Here's the next side. With our chain 1. And again, we're going to, this is our chain space, and this is our double crochet 2 together. So we're going to put the first half of the stitch into the chain space, the second half on the top of the double crochet 2 together. Let's try that again. And chain 1. So I'm going to get you to continue that all the way around, and I'll meet you back at when we finish the round. Okay, we're at the end of round 3. You should have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16 double crochets 2 together with a single chain in between each of them, and 3 chains in each corner. We're going to slip stitch to our beginning of the round, and we're going to turn our work. So we want to do this exact same pattern a total of 5 times for this first section of red, and then we're going to switch to our white color, or black if you're wanting to do it like the first blanket that I did. And feel free to go back and look at the pattern again if you are having trouble. And I will see you when we have finished 5 rounds. Okay, at the end of round 5, you should have 8 double crochets 2 together across each side for a total of 32. So I'm counting the 2 together as a single unit. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Chain 3s in the corner, chain 1s in between all the other stitches. We're going to be increasing the blanket by 8 double crochets 2 together every round. Now you can fasten off your red. So go ahead and cut your yarn, fasten that off, and we're going to start with our spider web color. So in this case, I'm going to be using white. Don't forget to turn your work. And you can start in the same place, or you can choose a new one, but I always start in the center. With the stacked singles, it really doesn't look like you have a distinct line. So this is my line up for where I'm joining. It looks pretty similar to the other ones. If you want to change and start in a new spot, that is fine. We're going to start again with our stacked singles. So we're going to start with a standing single crochet. So a slip knot on your hook, go into that chain space, pull up a loop, We're going to do a single crochet. We're going to then do that first half of our stacked single, yarn over and start our double crochet 2 together. Chain 1 and continue on the same as previous rows or rounds. We're just doing 1 round in the white. Okay, your count should be at 40 at the end of this round, and go ahead and slip stitch it together to close it when you're done, and my mind's blanking on the word. Tie off your color, and we'll be switching to blue after the white row. We'll be back in a moment. Okay, we've finished with round 6 with the white, and now we will be switching to our blue color. So get that slip knot on your hook. And make sure you turn your work. Start in the middle wherever you like, as long as it is the middle of the row. Into the chain space, do that standing single crochet, and then we're going to stack on top of that the unfinished other one. We're going to do complete our double crochet 2 together, chain 1, and away we go again. So you should have 48 double crochets 2 together at the end of this round. We want to do 4 repeats, so we want 4 rows of this blue, and it looks very dark on the camera, but 4 rounds of the blue, and then we're going to switch back to white, so I will see you back at the end of 4 rounds of blue. Okay, we've gotten through the 4 rounds of blue with the double crochet 2 together. Now you're going to attach white and do another round in white, and then you're going to switch back to the red and alternate the red and the blue stripes until you reach 40 inches if you're doing this for Boggy Creek, or until you have reached the size that you desire. We're going to get started with our spider applique next. To do that, you're going to need a heart color, which I'm using the red or the pink from the blanket. This one is for the Spider Woman blanket I made with baby pink, true gray, and a sky blue. And these are Bernat Super Value colors. It's also a worsted weight, and it recommends a 5mm hook, but for the blanket we're using a 6.5 to a 7. To do the applique though, we want to go down 1 to 2 hook sizes, preferably 2, or the spider will end up very large and loose and won't fit in that center square of your blanket. This is a Stenley hook. You're going to need some stitch markers, minimum of 4. You may want more depending on how you do that, and then something to cut your yarn. So we're going to start with the pink. We're going to make a magic ring, and we're going to put 10 single crochets into that magic ring. Be careful not to twist when you do this, or your circle will end up with a weird ripple in it. And I'll be back once we have 10 stitches, 10 single crochets in the magic ring. We've got 10 single crochets into our magic ring. I've put a stitch marker on the first stitch that I did. We're going to tighten up that magic ring, and we're going to slip stitch where the marker is. So go ahead and slip stitch it to close. You may have already done that. and put your marker into that space where you just slip stitched. Okay. We're going to ignore that first space, that first one, which is why you put a marker there. That is your beginning of round. We're going to go into the next stitch and do 2 single crochets into that stitch, 2 single crochets, which is a single crochet increase, into the next stitch, and then we're going to slip stitch into 2 stitches in a row. We're going to do a single crochet in this stitch, and we're going to put a marker on that stitch. That is the tip or the bottom tip of the heart where it comes to a point. We're now going to mirror what we did on this side up on the other side. So 2 slip stitches in a row, and then single crochet increases in the next 2 stitches. So that's 2 single crochets into each of the next 2 stitches. And then we're going to slip stitch back into our beginning of round. And that will give you your heart shape. And you may need to retighten that magic ring. We're going to put a stitch marker back into that slip stitch spot. And if you can get it into the space below, that is where our last stitch will be going for this round. Now we're going to do a slip stitch all the way around down to the tip. We're going to chain 1, and then we're going to slip stitch all the way back up. We're going to be using the front loop of every stitch and leave the back loop available for the spider's body. So again, front loop, slip stitches. Go ahead and slip stitch down to that tip where that single crochet was done, and I'll meet you there. At the bottom or tip of the heart, you can remove your stitch marker. You won't need it again. We're going to do a slip stitch in the front loop, then we're going to chain 1. And now we're going to slip stitch in every stitch all the way back up to the top, and I'll meet you when you get back to your start marker. And again, it's in the front loop. All right, once you're back at the beginning of round, you can slip your marker out. And we're going to go into this space here. So I hope you can see that. Rather than going into the front loop, we're going to go, well, you can go through that front loop, but from the top rather than the bottom, into that space. We're going to slip stitch there, and then we're going to fasten off. Now go back into that same spot where you just put your stitch, grab your yarn end, and pull it through. And there is your heart for the center of the spider. If you grab your darning needle, which I'm not sure where I put it, but if you take your magic loop one and go into the base of those stitches around again, it will keep it tight for you. Okay, we're going to be working with the spider body color now, which for this blanket is true gray. For other blankets is likely black. we're going to make a slip knot on our hook, and we're still using the same smaller hook size. We're going to go into where we pulled our tail. So go into the tail, or into that stitch, do a standing single crochet, then we're going to do a stacked single crochet on there to make a double crochet. We're going to put a second double crochet into the same stitch. So our plan for this round is to put single crochets on top of single crochets, double crochets on top of slip stitches. We need to increase the size of our circle though. So if we had an increase on the previous rows, or one of the previous rows, we are going to do just one stitch in those stitches. In places like the slip stitches where we only did one stitch, we are going to increase on those areas, including the tip where we had only had one stitch. The chain doesn't count as an increase. So working in the back loop, on this first side, we're going to put a single crochet into each of the next 4 stitches. Okay, we are now at the slip stitches that we did. So we have 2 slip stitches. What we need to do is put 2 double crochets into each of these slip stitched. So that's the first slip stitch. There we go. 2 double crochets into the second slip stitch. And we had a single crochet at the tip, but only one. So we are going to put 2 single crochets into the tip of the heart. Now we're back to slip stitches. So we're going to do double crochets. 2 double crochets into those 2 slip stitches. Again, we're working in the back loop for this entire round. And now we're back to the 4 single crochets. So because they were increased on that second round, we're going to just do a single crochet into each of those 4 stitches. Okay, that gets us back to our beginning of round. We're going to slip stitch into that first stitch, and we're going to put a marker there to remind us that that is the beginning of round. It looks a bit wonky. It does work out though. It will look more like a circle as we go. So this next round is going to be another increase. In a normal circle that we're doing, it's the standard increase. So we're going to do actually into the same stitch that you slip stitched into, 2 single crochets, and we're going to work in single crochets from here on out. 1 single crochet in the next, an increase, so 2 single crochets followed by a single crochet. We're going to repeat that all the way back to the beginning of round, and I will meet you there. Okay, back at the beginning, you should have 30 stitches in that round. We're going to slip stitch back into our beginning stitch. Now we're going to move our beginning of round into the center of the first 2 double crochets that we made into the heart. So you've slip stitched into the beginning of round. We're going to slip stitch 2 more stitches over. We're going to chain 2. We're going to start working on adding a head. You're going to do into this first chain, we're going to put 6 single crochets. Now I recommend going through both the side loop and the back loop to give it less of a hole in the center. So go ahead and put 6 single crochets into that chain. Once you have 6 single crochets into that chain space or chain, go ahead and add a stitch marker to your first single crochet into that chain so that it is easier to find when we get back to that. Now we're going to slip stitch into the next stitch. So we'd slip stitched into this one here, which we had our chain from. So you want the next stitch over. We're going to slip stitch into there to secure that side of the head to your work. Now we're going to do 2 single crochets and then an increase. So 2 single crochets into the next. We're going to do that all the way around back to 1 stitch before where we started the chain. So that stitch will be how we attach the head to this side. So go ahead and go all the way around, 2 single crochets, so 1 single crochet, 1 single crochet, and then an increase, 2 single crochets, all the way around until you are 1 stitch before where the head starts. Okay, so we have 6 single crochets for the head. You have 34 stitches around the body. We have a slip stitch on this side, a slip stitch that will be here, that will not be counted in any further row counts or round counts. And you should have ended with the second of your single crochets. So we had, this was my single crochet increase, single crochet, single crochet. Now we're going to get into this slip stitch, and we're also going to get into this first stitch of the head. Okay, and take out your marker once you're in there. We're going to slip stitch through both of those stitches as one. So that's going to be our way of tying it together, like so. And now you can see the beginning of a very tiny head and a round body. Now we're going to go back into that first stitch. We're going to put a single crochet. In the next stitch, we are going to put 2 single crochets. So we're going to increase the size of the head. Then we're going to do a single crochet. And 2 single crochets. A single crochet and an increase, 2 single crochets. I tried doing double before and the head was just getting too wavy. So that will give you 9 stitches around the head. We're going to skip the slip stitch that we did here to connect it to the body, which is here. And we're going to then go into that first single crochet. We're going to do 3 single crochets in a row, so 1 into each of the next 3 stitches. Now we're going to chain 8 for the first leg. We're going to now single crochet back down the leg. I prefer to work in the back loop, but if you want to do down the side of the leg, that's fine too. Just make sure it's the side that is facing the bottom of the spider, not the head. So starting in the second chain from the hook, place your first single crochet. We're going to single crochet all the way down the leg, and that will give you 7 single crochets, and I'll meet you when you have got those 7 single crochets in place. So there's our first leg. It's going to curl on you, and that's okay. It will be fixed when we sew it onto the blanket. Now we're going to put in 3 single crochets into the next 3 single crochets. And we will start our second leg. So 8 chains. And starting in the second chain from the hook, we're going to do single crochets all the way back. So I will meet you at the bottom when you have 7 single crochets. That is the second leg finished. Now we're going to do 3 single crochets into the next, 1 single crochet into each of the next 3 stitches. Make another leg exactly the same, and then 1 single crochet into the next 3 stitches, make a leg, and I will be back with you at the end of the 4th leg being made. When you've finished your 8th leg, go ahead and put a single crochet into the next stitch in order to secure that leg down. And now we're going to place stitch markers so we can mirror this on the other side. So the stitch, because we're working this way, we want to mark where the stitch that locks the leg down is. So on the first one, it is 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches down from the head. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So go ahead and put a stitch marker in that 4th one. All the following ones will be 3. So 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And you're counting the first stitch as the stitch after where your marker is. And then one more time, 1, 2, 3. So you're going to single crochet 1 single crochet into each stitch all the way across to your marker, single crochet into where your marker is, chain 8, single crochet 7 back, single crochet into the next 3 stitches, and repeat the leg. So I will meet you back when we get to the end of the last leg near the head. I've fastened down my 8th leg with a single crochet. We're going to be putting a couple more crochets, doing 1 more round of the head, and then we will be fastening off. I just put stitch markers on the edge of the legs just to get them to lie down a little bit flatter so I can show you what the spider looks like. The one thing that should have happened with yours is you want about a 90-degree angle between the 1st and 4th leg on each side. And that is partly the way that the spider is going to sit on the blanket. Now we're going to so I had the single crochet after the leg was finished. We're going to put a single crochet into the next 2 stitches, and then we're back onto the head. We're going to do 2 single crochets and then an increase, 2 single crochets, and then an increase, 2 single crochets, and then instead of an increase, we're just going to slip stitch into that last stitch and fasten off. If you want to not have to pull more yarn out, you can leave a very long tail. You need probably more than a meter, I think, in order to sew around this entire edge to attach it to the blanket, or you can just pull yarn separately for that. So you can go ahead and weave in any ends that you need to on the spider and put that aside. We're going to do the webbing next. So this is my light pink and blue Spider Woman blanket that I made. You can see I already have web on most of the sides here. The webbing for these center 2 sections are just a chain and being fastened down. The webbing for the corners, though, is thicker. It is a chain all the way up and slip stitching back down the chain to make it a little bit thicker in the corners. In order to find where you need to put these, you will need your stitch markers. And we're going to put stitch markers to mark thirds along the top edge of the blankets. So I'll show you on the one that I haven't stitched yet. You can see I have 2 markers placed. What you're going to do is fold your blanket along that edge in thirds, and then you're going to put your slip stitcher in, or your marker, into the center of each side of the fold. You can see I'm a little off on this side. So we're just going to move that one over there, okay? So that you have your blanket divided into thirds. Now you need to go down to the center, grab some stitch markers, and where these 2 double crochets 2 together are on that side, you're going to basically split the middle of them. So you're going to go into the center of one stitch and into, so this is round 2, round 3. You're going to go onto the join between round 2 and round 3 in the center of each of those double crochet 2 together, and that about splits it into thirds at the bottom. It's best to do this on some sort of flat surface. What you're going to do now is grab a length of yarn that you can see on your blanket. I wrapped it around my stitch marker a few times just to get it to stay in place. And then you want to get a straight line between that stitch marker and your stitch marker at the top. And wrap it around that top stitch marker a few times just to keep it stable. And you can see I get a nice straight line between those. So I'm going to take stitch markers now, and wherever the yarn crosses my web line, I'm going to put a marker wherever it best suits a spot for this to be joined. So on this one, I'm going to put it through the top of the webbing. For this one, I'm going to put it through the bottom of the webbing. On this one, I will put it on the bottom of the webbing as well. This one is going to be the top. I don't want to split stitches at the top or the bottom if possible. I want to go where there's already a gray loop from the webbing. And then on this top one, looks like we go into the top here. And I've got one more at the bottom here, and we're going to go into the top of that stitch. Now you can slide your yarn off of those markers. You have a straight line. You can do one at a time, or you can do all of them at once, depending on how confident you are in your stitch markers staying still. But now that you have those lined up, we will take our webbing. We're going to go back to our larger hook size. So in this case, it is my 6.5 Susan Bates. We're going to make a slip knot. And we're going to attach with another slip stitch where our first marker is. So this is the only time you're going to split a stitch. Okay. Remove your stitch marker just so that it's easier to work around it. Now we're going to chain until it is long enough to reach the next stitch marker. It is approximately 2 chains for every row. So I'm going to have 2, 4, 6, 8. I'll see if 8 is enough. Sometimes you need one more, sometimes you need one less. And it does depend if you're at the top or the bottom of the webbing for how many you will need. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. When I put that down, I'd say I'd go one less. You want it to stretch just a little bit to reach that. I'm going to go underneath that stitch, slip stitch in. I can remove that marker and chain up to the next one. So 2, 4, 6, 8 should be 7 or 8 stitches again, or chains. So I'll start with 7. That looks about right. So I'm going to go under that stitch, slip stitch on. So you can see it lies fairly straight. We don't want it so loose that it kind of makes a wobbly line, and we don't want it so tight that it pulls the blanket together. So go ahead and chain all the way up to the top. When you get to the edge, we're just going to fasten off and cut your yarn up there and move on to the next one. You're going to do 2 of these thinner webs on each side of the blanket, so you will have 8 of those in total. And I'll just show you again what it looks like when I'm done. Okay, that's my web line finished. So all the way from the center, all the way up. I have one left to do, but I will do that off camera, and then I will show you how to make this on a different blanket sample, just so that I don't have to do quite as long a stretch, and the ones on this blanket are already done. I'll be back in a moment. I have all of my webs now sewn. I'm just going to show you the weaving in for these top parts of the web. Basically what you're going to want to do is I tend to go through the back again. I work my way through the chain fibers until I get to the web stripe. So if your blanket is able to end on the web, you just weave it into the web row. if you have to come down a little bit, just come down and then work your way into the webbing color and just tie it off like you normally would, or weave it in like you normally would with any other row. So lots of back and forth, catch lots of fibers, give it a good stretch before you clip it, and do that at top and bottom all the way around. I'm going to show you the different ways you can do the corner webbing on a sample one that I started that is Peony Pink in Bernat Super Value. It's a worsted 4, same as the baby pink one, and it is Peony Pink. The webbing didn't have a label. I've since discovered that this is Bernat Premium, and this is Sky Gray. And then the blue in this case is also Bernat Super Value, and it is in the color Peacock. Although I believe I will rip out this blue and replace it with the bright blue when it arrives at my store. So in this case, we're going to take our webbing color, which in this case is the Sky Gray. We're going to make a slip knot. We're going to attach it between row 2 and 3 in the corner. So go under that, pull through the yarn, slip stitch it into or through your slip knot. Now the first way that I did this was to chain all the way up to the top, attach the chain to the top, slip stitch all the way back, attaching to each row on the way, or each round on the way back. The way that I did it originally was to hold the yarn for the way back to the back of the blanket. It's pretty awkward, but I'll show you what that looks like. And then I'll show you alternatives to that, which just give you a heavier line on the back. So we're going to chain. It's about 2 to 3 chains per row. My original blanket had 31 rows, so I chained 90 for the classic blanket, and that was about the perfect size, but it does depend on the size of hook you're using and how loose your chains are. But if you start with 2 chains per row, you would start with at least 62 and then see if you need to add additional chains to that. When you get to that top, you're just going to do a slip stitch, and then I chained 1 at the top just so that it made a nicer looking end. Now, when I did originally, I held this to the back, and when I slip stitched all the way back, I pulled the yarn from the back and through. So I didn't need to go around any of these to pull a loop around because it was doing it automatically because I was using the yarn from the other side. It worked fine for the top. It gets pretty awkward for the bottom, but I really liked the way that it looked. And it was beautifully flat, very secure. It's just awkward. So one of the ways around that awkwardness is to use these holes caused by the corner to pull your yarn up and through. So you can slip stitch, use the yarn, pull through, slip stitch into the next one, pull through, slip stitch into the next one. So you can see that one was 3 chains. Now I'm going to go into this one, and it's on the other side of my corner, so I'll pull my thread through the other side of that row and slip stitch. You can see it leaves a very nice flat, almost rounded or I-cord looking web. On the back, you have just a single strand going all the way down. So it leaves a very clean looking finish. If you want to do it that way, go right ahead. It is, like I said, very nice looking. I'll show you the alternatives here. So one of the alternatives is to chain just like you did for the side of the blanket chains and stitch around just the webbing rows. And then when you get to the top, chain around the top, chain one, and then you can just slip stitch all the way down. I find it leaves the one side lifted, but I'll show you what it looks like so you can decide for yourself how you want to do this. So I don't know how well it will show up on camera, but you can see it kind of rolls upwards instead of lying flat. It's, I think, an acceptable way to do it, but you may want to go back and tack this down or do the next alternative, which is to do the same on the way up, just attach it in those few spots, but on your way back down, so slip stitch this one into each chain, but when you get to a row edge like this, you slip stitch around it all the way back, then slip stitch this one will need to go around. Actually, that one goes over top of it, so you just have to pay attention to where it crosses. Pull that through. Sorry, I split the yarn here a little bit. Let's fix that. There we go. Okay, so you can see it looks much more like that first way I did it, although not quite as even. There's a little bit of jogging where you attached it on the way up. On the back, you can see it's a much thicker, more noticeable loop on the way. That was from the single, or that's just from where I have it currently attached. But that one works too. It's just not quite as straight as the first. If you wanted to chain all the way up and then single crochet this way back through each one with the yarn on top, you could also do that. So I will show you that one as well, just so you have all your options, because it will depend on your patience and your dexterity and how much time you have. So same attachment, but we just did chain all the way up. We can't leave these chains all the way up unattached though, because that could be a strangulation hazard for a kid. So you do need to attach all of these webbings, regardless of the method. So this one will be our for our row. And it is a little easier to do this on a flat surface or on something that you can lay the blanket over to see clearly, so that you are connecting it in the correct spots. In some ways it's a little bit more awkward trying to pull a loop up and around that than the first method, but that one has the yarn at the back, which makes it a little trickier for seeing and grabbing your yarn. But that is what it looks like. So very similar to the first method, you just have these double lines over each of the one, which isn't a big deal. It's just a different look, and it does slightly tilt to the one side just because of the way that you have to wrap around. So you can see how it turns here wherever you wrap around a row to catch the row. So those are the ways of doing the corners. When I get to the bottom of the corner, I just tie a really good knot and cut my yarn because it will be covered by the applique. So no need to weave in the ends on these ones. Okay, we're just about done here. I'm just going to show you how I weave in my magic circle. So pull that tight. You're on the back side of your applique, so that slip stitching edge is on the front. You're going to thread that end, and you can see where you come in here or where you come out. We're going to continue going around the circle through the base of these loops from the stitches. And I go at least one more time, like once around, to tighten that up so it acts as like that double loop, magic loop. Okay, and that tightens it up nicely. And then you can weave it in how you would with your regular stitches. So congratulations for getting this far on your blanket. It's now time to do our finishing touch, which is applying the spider to the center. So I have just these stitch markers on the end just to fasten it down. You can use whatever type of stitch marker works best for you. So we kind of want our legs, so the first two, or the first leg on each side and the last leg on each side, are going to be going along our corners. So those thicker corners that we've just done. So go ahead and take a stitch marker. You want the head kind of centered between the two side webs. And then we just gently lay the leg along that corner web and attach your stitch marker. I would do all four corners first before you do the rest of them. So hold your head in place. We're going to stretch this leg up to this side. Use your stitch marker to put it in place. And like I said, you can use locking stitch markers, or just make sure you've done a good job of twisting it to hold it in place. We do our bottom two legs in the same way. They're going along the corner webs. There we go. We've got our spider in place. Now I liked putting the legs along all the webs, like he's standing on the webs. So again, just gently stretch those legs. Again, we don't want to be pulling the spider out of shape. We just want it stretched enough that we can sew it down easily. And here's our final leg. Okay. Now we're just going to take a long piece of thread. We're going to thread our needle, and you can start anywhere you want, but you're just going to be catching the back of this. If you want to catch the back loop of this last row, you can definitely do that as well. But pull through your yarn so that you have a bit of a tail left so that it can be tied to this end when you get all the way around. And you want to, now I like to catch just the top of the stitches when I'm sewing things on, and pull my yarn through. If you feel like it is more secure, if you go all the way through, you'll just have something that will be seen on the other side. This way makes it fairly invisible. So you can see that there, and then on the other side, you're not seeing where I've stitched so far. You can't see that. So there's no sign of where I've been stitching on this side, just where these came down. So up to you how you want to sew it, but you want to sew all the way around. So around every leg. You don't have to go in every stitch. I probably go in every other stitch. Just check and see how secure it feels to you. And you just want to make sure that you're keeping the shape of the spider so that you're not, stretching it out of shape somehow. You just want to make sure that it is lying the way that you have placed it. So go ahead and finish that off, and you will have a complete blanket. Thanks for coming along with me to do this, and I hope to see some of your makes in the future. Bye.